It's really, really, really fermenting thoroughly. It's starting to soften, fermenting, and just smells incredible. All right, it's time to get down to business. I'm ready to make myself some cubed radish kimchi. I've got my homemade coffee right here. If you haven't seen my video on that, check it out, like and subscribe, donate, and make purchases on Amazon. Not just my stuff, but everybody's stuff. And I'm gonna show you how I peel the radish. All right, now this is a daikon radish, which is the kind you're probably going to find in your market. You can get a Korean radish, which is like twice the size of this and a little bit more green. And I believe the Korean radish, you can use that too. I believe the Korean radish is a little bit more bitter. I have used it sometimes, but I usually just use a daikon because that's what I find most often. Now with these radishes, the skin is very bitter. So I always peel it twice in each spot, right? And the reason I'm using a plate to catch the peeling is just because it's, when you have 5 or 6 of these things to do, it's just a lot easier. Let's put it this way. Put it this way so you guys can see the dishes and everything. You don't like my dishes? Why don't you go watch MATCHSTICK's video if you don't like my dishes? All right, so anyhow, I'm only Josh and MATCHSTICK. We love you. You know, seriously, if it weren't for MATCHSTICK and for Lauren Chun, I wouldn't know how to make this stuff. It's a big deal to be able to cook and take care of yourself. As far as I'm concerned, these women are true healers. And Lauren Chun says a couple really important things. First, she says that she reminds us in her book, the title is Kimchi, 60 Traditional and Modern Ways to Cook and Eat Kimchi. Kimchi just means salted vegetable. It comes from 2 Chinese characters, which means salted and vegetable. And she counts 160 different ways of making kimchi. And every family has its own variation. I'm gonna go ahead and peel this. And you'll notice that this is a little bit wilted, right? It's a little bit dehydrated, but that's okay because we're gonna salt it in order to brine it, and then we're gonna ferment it, so it doesn't matter if it's a little dehydrated. It's a very fresh carrot. The only reason it's like that is because I left it out of the fridge for 2 days, and the moisture started to escape. The other thing that she says, that Lauren Chun says about making kimchi is that there are four parts of the process: brining, seasoning, fermenting, and then storing. If this is your first time making the kimchi, my recommendation to you is that you just cut it up and just have the experience of eating your kimchi in the size and shape that you cut it. And I think what you'll find is that you have a preference. Some members of the family have a preference, and you'll figure out what works for you. Always use some kind of sea salt. Don't use iodized salt. This salt does not supply iodine, okay? Don't use regular table salt. I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons of salt. And then I'm gonna use 2 tablespoons of turbinado sugar. Now again, keep in mind that there's many ways to make kimchi. Technically, if you just did this, vegetable and salt, that would be kimchi. And then 2 tablespoons of turbinado sugar. And we have to let that brine for a little bit. I know that the brine is done when it seems like as much water as possible has come out of the radish cubes. How do you know when that is? Well, if you just wait an hour 2 hours maybe, most all of it will be out. Now I'm going to use my hands, but if you use your hand, you should use a glove. And I'm taking care to gently as I can stir these things, right? While not taking 1,000 years. So I don't want to scratch them up or smash them against each other. It's more important with the more delicate Napa cabbage leaves, or if you're working with something else like eggplant. But still, in the final equation, you can tell if your beautiful, beautiful kimchi has been handled roughly or gently. Now let's julienne our daikon radish and our carrot. I usually like them about finger length. So we'll do something like this. Again, you don't have to be, scientific about it, right? The reason I cut it in half is because it makes it easier to handle. Okay, now you have two options. So you can either do the slow option where you julienne them into matchsticks like so. Or you can grab a bunch of them and what you get is like a mix of different sizes and shapes and thicknesses, and it can be a little more chaotic and a little bit more interesting. I really want things to go quickly. Cooking is part of how I express myself and part of how I raise and care for the people around me. But if it takes too long, I'll just drive myself fucking crazy. So straight up, I just can't make it too much work. And my tendency is to make it too much work. I don't usually brine the julienne parts. It always turns out fine. Yeah, that much. I use that much for the radish kimchi. You don't always see julienned radish, and you don't always see carrot of any kind with kkakdugi radish kimchi. But I love having these strands of radish in any kind of kimchi, and I love carrot. There's also built into the idea of almost all Korean food, there's also the idea of using the 5 elements. So that's white for metal, the 5 elements of Taoist medicine, or Chinese medicine. White for metal, for water, it's black, wood, it's green, and then for fire, it's red, and for earth, it's yellow. Yeah, so that's pretty beautiful, right? Mangchi uses 2 tablespoons kosher salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and she uses a 1/4 cup fish sauce, 2/3 cup hot pepper flakes, 2 tablespoons minced garlic, and 1 teaspoon of minced ginger. Whereas Lauren Chun, the author of the Kimchi Cookbook, for about the same amount of daikon radishes, she uses 2 tablespoons salt, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 2 teaspoons ginger, 1 tablespoon sugar, 2/3 cup Korean chili pepper flakes, 1/4 cup of beef stock, and 2 tablespoons of salted shrimp. Now, the cubed radish has been fermenting has been brining for quite a while. You can see that there's quite a lot of liquid in the bottom, right? So I'm just gonna give this a stir, just to make sure that turn it over at least once, make sure that everything is coated. Okay, now we're gonna prepare a teaspoon of ginger. When you're processing garlic, it's very helpful to have wet hands. Two tablespoons minced garlic. We're gonna add some scallion. You can add however many you want. Now these are really good for soup. If I were gonna make soup today, I would save these. But I'm not gonna make soup today. Just taking off the parts of the green onion that don't look so good. They're a little bit wilted. That's the beautiful thing about making things like kimchi. You can decide for yourself how much is the right amount. And every family has a different way of making kimchi. I remember my grandmother, she would make kimchi from seafood. And she would make this wonderfully delightful, chewy, savory, just, sweet, out of this world squid. And I never have been able to get that to safely ferment. But that's just a perfect example of how every chef, cook, or family has their own way of making kimchi, and you should too. For example, you might find, if you're a vegan, you might not use fish sauce. If you're vegetarian, you might want to stay away from beef stock. You might want to omit the sugar altogether. You might want to omit the ginger. You might want to use a heck of a lot more garlic and a lot less ginger, and all that is fine. All right, so now the radish is thoroughly fermented. So we're gonna drain it off. And look at how much juice has come out. That's probably about 1.5 cups. Now we're ready to mix everything. Now for this part, I'm gonna use a spoon to mix because all these delicate pieces here that are gonna get completely bashed by my hand if I do it that way. And then I'm using this GOCHUGARU flake, which I got in K-Town. You can get it off of Amazon. And I'm gonna use about 2/3 of a cup. All right. Beautiful, right? And put back in a little bit of the juice from the brine. And mix it up. Okay, looks a little dry to me, so I'm gonna add some more brine. Really would be no harm in adding all the brine. It just would be more liquidy. And you can see actually that when you make kkakdugi, when you make radish kimchi, you'll see that over a few days, the radish releases, the fermentation releases a lot of liquid, like more liquid than other vegetables, more liquid than cabbage, for example. Yeah, this looks really good. Wow, it's good. It smells really, 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 really good. And take a taste now. So here's one of the pieces of radish. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot the fish sauce. Tastes damn good even without the fish sauce though. But the fish sauce is next level now, turning it up a notch. Monchi sent me to tear up the spot. All right, I'm gonna add about 1/4 cup of fish sauce. Yeah. I like the Red Boat brand, but this, I don't know how to say it, but it's Viet Huang, something like that. This brand is fine. And now mix. Now let's mix again. Put them in the jars. So now I'm just going to use my fist. I taught someone once how to make kimchi and told her that it was okay to use a longer container like this, right? Like this kind of container. Unfortunately, all of her kimchi molded on the surface. And the reason it's better to use a narrow container like a jar is because it reduces the surface area. All right, so for this next part, you got a couple options. So your first option is to put a little bit more liquid in there. And that'll level out the surface area. And or get yourself a piece of plastic wrap, or you can use a cabbage leaf. And you stick the plastic wrap down on top of the liquid. Just like that, just to discourage any air from coming in. So what's gonna happen is this kimchi is gonna start fermenting tomorrow, and there's gonna be more liquid in there tomorrow than there is today. And in about 2 days, 3 days of fermenting on the countertop, it'll be fermented well enough that I can stick them in the fridge. And they'll keep there for a few months. Day 2, y'all. Look at that beautiful color. Yeah. I want you guys to see the air bubbles that are in this, because yeah, you see those coming to the top? Wow, look at those. Look at all that carbon dioxide, man, because it's really, really, really fermenting thoroughly. It's starting to soften, fermenting, and just smells incredible. And I'm going to go ahead and take this piece of plastic out. But yeah, look at this. Every day you got to push it down. Every day that it sits on the countertop before you stick it in the fridge, you got to push it down. That makes sure that you get all the air out from between the vegetables. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoy and try to make this recipe. I hope you're taking care of yourselves and of each other. I love you all.